On November 16th, 2013, we got a phone call. A phone call that nobody would ever want to get.
I heard my wife scream. For the rest of my life, I'll never forget the scream. And she came down the hall, running down the hall. And she looked at me, she said, "Nick is gone." I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" She goes, "Nick is dead."
I go, "I just finished getting off the phone with him a couple of hours." She goes, "Maria,
your son's deceased."
A Fresno athlete has been beaten to death at Elbow Room and Grill.
Paramedics confirmed him dead on the scene.
According to witnesses, Nick Burial was savagely beaten outside the restaurant.
His body was transported to the hospital, while police officers continue to investigate the incident.
The parents of the victim have been notified. We'll keep you informed as more details become available. I'm Michael Carter, ABC 30 Action News.
January 2nd, 1989, my son Nicholas was born. Before that, I can recall, like it's yesterday, when my wife came out of the restroom with a test, and she told me she was pregnant. And I remember getting on my knees and wrapping my arms around her waist, and I remember that moment speaking to her belly and tell her this: "Your name is Nicholas, I'm your father." I gave him his name. That moment, I realized that I was going to have a son. I did.
That evening, I spoke to my son, and we were at the movie theater.
My wife and friends and I, we had gone out that night, and I was the designated driver. I went to pick everybody up. We were at the movies.
And he was working at Wells Fargo Bank, and he was closing there. And he goes, "Mom," he goes, "can you pray for me?" I go, "Yeah, sure." And I wasn't going to pick up because it was in the middle of the movie, but something told me I better pick up. So I went in the hallway to talk to him. I go, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, me and Marissa," his ex-girlfriend at the time, we're going to go to the Elbow Room and Grill. And we're going to have a few drinks there, and we're going to have, dinner or something there. I said, "Okay, Nick, remember, Uber drive, no drinking and driving." "I know, Mom, we already have it down." And I was like, "Okay, son." And so I started praying. I can't even remember the prayer I said to him, but I'm sure, it was for protection, to cover him, wherever his destination was, to bring him back home safe.
So when I got home, I sat down at the kitchen table and I started listening to some gospel music. I was just listening to a song that...
At 10:45, I get a phone call
from my son's ex-girlfriend's phone. And I recall my wife saying that when she got the call, she knew immediately something was wrong, because it was Marissa that was calling and not my son. From what the police reports and the witnesses said, is that he grabbed 2 drinks and turned and bumped into the guy. And in that moment, the guy attacked him and started punching him there inside the Elbow Room. And the witnesses said, I recall one woman said that she remembered every detail of that moment because the guy pushed her out of the way, just shoved her out of the way to get to my son. And she said that she remembers my son bending down and grabbing him just to stop from getting hit. And then they broke it up. It wasn't really, my son never threw a punch. He was just getting beat on by this big guy. Nick's only 5'7", the guy was like 6'2", maybe 100 pounds heavier. Mismatch. And they forced my son to leave that place. They made my son go out the front door, they let the other guy go out the back door, and all they did was lead the lion to the lamb. Because he met Nick in the front and attacked him again. The guy lifted him up, Slammed him head first into the concrete. Slammed him so hard. And then began to kick him in the head and the chest, stomped on him, beat him relentlessly. One of the things that just tears me apart is there were people there who watched. Just watched. No one even tried to break it up. That guy beat him to death on that November night, cold. And he laid there in the concrete, dead, and nobody reacted. I don't understand that. I believe that men, we would react if you seen something. At least scream, holler, do something. And I know that moment when that took place, that God was there. Because the only person that reacted, it's not by chance nor coincidence, is because she was, in my opinion, she was placed there for a reason. It was a friend of my wife's. It's not ironic, it's not by chance. She was the first person that went out there to see a young man and she didn't know who it was. And she grabbed him and looked and she realized it was my son, Nicholas. I'm his father. I'm supposed to protect him. That's my job. That's my role. He's my son. And somebody else had to be there to comfort him. Our friend, my wife's friend, said that she couldn't get the image of his eyes rolled back in his head and his tongue sticking out, that he was dead. And my wife got a phone call.
And it was off of Marissa's phone, his ex-girlfriend. And it was my girlfriend in the other line to tell me that my son was gone. And I said, how could that be? I go, I just finished getting off the phone with him a couple of hours. She goes, Maria, your son is gone. You need to hurry up and get here to the Alba Room and Grill.
And I had earpods in my ear and I was listening to some gospel music. Through the music, I heard my wife scream. For the rest of my life, I'll never forget the scream.
And I said, babe, our son is gone.
I'm like, what? What do you mean?
I go, he got assaulted.
This Nick is dead.
And he got in a vehicle and we just took off.
The anger that I felt in that moment. Why wasn't I there for him? To see my wife the way she was, screaming and crying. And what do?
We were still in shock, like we didn't even know where we were going, and then the freeway took us to Fresno Community Hospital.
Before we got to the hospital, we didn't know then what we know now. Is that the first responder who showed up to the scene was my son Nick's best friend. How does that happen? The miracle started working then. Because he was dead, but she would not quit. She was so angry, saying, why you, Nick? Whitney Jones. Even though they pronounced him dead there. And this is unimaginable, that my son was dead for 25 minutes with no signs of life for 25 minutes. Whitney said that they tried to pull her off of him. And she said she couldn't stop, that was her friend. There's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend. She put away her professionalism. She put away her knowledge of what she was supposed to do because she was trying to save her friend. And even when they told her that it wasn't worth it, that he was gone, she continued. From that moment they left the scene all the way to the hospital. When they arrived, we happened to arrive. That's God.
I just remember the EMT reversing.
And as I stopped, my wife said, that's Nick. She jumped off the truck, went running to it.
Just ran out. My husband hadn't parked yet. I just ran out, and my sister followed, and all I could see the EMT reversing.
My sister-in-law Sylvia jumped off with her, and they both went running to the ambulance, not knowing if that was the ambulance or not. And it was.
And then I'm looking at the right door of the view mirror, and I could see his friend.
How does that all happen?
I knew it was Nick in there. I knew it. And as they were pulling him out of the gurney, he was already in a white sheet covered up. And I tried to hop on to grab him, to just hold him one more time. And I just remember this man grabbing my arm and said, "Ma'am, you can't.
I remember parking in. They were gone already. They had been led inside. I didn't know where to go. I just was kind of looking back and forth which door they go into. I was running around like asking people, where did they take him? And they're like, who are you talking about? The ambulance said you can't go in there. Or ambulance driver, another man told me, you cannot be here. You cannot go. You got to go around. And I said, no, they just took my son in there. I'm going through there. Sir, you got to go around. I said, no, not going around. We got in, and I see my wife and the doctors were there, and they told us to come into this little room.
And the doctor said, your son's gone.
The doctor said, your son's gone. Your son's deceased, sir. Our son, my son, such a gifted person. He started walking before he turned 10 months old. He learned to read when he was 2, literally. He was a 4.0 student his entire academic career, all the way into college. 4.0. President of high school, part of so many different organizations. He was just intelligent, and we all want to believe that our children are blessed and gifted. And I'm not saying it to downplay anybody else, but our son was. When I was a young man, I was able to play professionally soccer in Europe. And I was always, obviously, a little bit biased about sports. I wanted my sons to play soccer. Same with Nick. But my wife said, you got to give him a chance to do other things. So we put him in everything. I let him t-ball, basketball, all these things, but he eventually went towards soccer. Between his academics and soccer, he was able to attain and earn scholarships to attend the University of San Francisco, academically and athletically.
And then we went to this waiting room, and that's where all of Nick's friends, they were all there looking at us. And I'm like, why are they staring at us, babe? I go, Nick's alive. He's alive. And we were still in shock. We were like in shock. Everybody was there crying.
There were so many people at the hospital. It was incredible. And I remember over the loudspeaker that they said they needed to stop allowing people to come up, that the floor was beyond its capacity. I'm not exaggerating when I say there was 300 or 400 people there, literally. People from other states, our family members and friends.
From Oregon, from Texas, from Utah, from Arizona.
His whole Don's team from the University of San Francisco showed up.
He had so many friends that loved him that were there. Everybody from Miramani Elementary School, Rayburn Elementary School, Clovis East High School. A lot of people would come in.
School teachers, his counselors who wrote letters for him.
Nick was a 4.0 GPA student from kindergarten all the way through high school. He was an active leader. He was a youth leader there.
Nick was accepted into Yale University, and he chose the San Francisco only because we tried to talk him out of it, not leaving out of state. He was accepted into Columbia and Ivy League schools. He even visited Notre Dame. He was such a blessed kid, always pursuing the next step. Never quitting. Always facing the challenges head forward. That's who he was. And then he gets beaten to death for bumping into our own God.
He got picked up, slammed to the ground, and he hit him. He smashed his chest, his lungs. He had bruised ribs. His heart was almost collapsed.
He didn't deserve that. No one deserves that. The doctors came into that room.
And from that point, that's when the doctors were just giving us bad news, and he was going to be this and that, and he was going to be combated, he was going to be in a convalescent home. And we fought and fought.
And one of the doctors was at a whiteboard, and he drew a circle on the board. And he looked at us almost sarcastically. What's in the circle? We're like, well, there's nothing in the circle. And he looked at us without any kind of emotion and said, exactly, that's what your son is right now. He has no brain activity. And we're keeping him alive. He didn't try to comfort us. My wife said, you're wrong. I remember that. She told him that moment, you don't have the final say. She said, I serve a God that does mighty miracles, and you're going to see one day.
He's going to show you that a miracle's going to take place, and you're going to see it, and you're going to witness it.
And he kind of just shrugged it off and said, okay, my son's death was my resurrection in Jesus Christ. Because of what took place, I started to seek some Jesus in a way I'd never done before. So I had nowhere else to go. Because at that time, I wasn't completely saved. So they told us we had 48 hours to be able to make a decision. So it went from 48 hours to 3 days, basically, because they said they thought they heard a faint heartbeat. They were going to give us another day. I never left. I was like, how could you even ask me that? You're telling me that I'm supposed to give you permission to take my son's life? You're asking me to do that? My son. From the time he was 5 years old until he made it into college, we trained every day almost. He had a dream. I told him, you want to be a professional, you got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You've got to run every day. You've got to train every day. You've got to do more than what the next guy does, because there's always somebody there to take your spot. You got to do it if you want it. I'll be there for you and help you, but you've got to want it. Because one man changed a lot of things that we can't change now. My wife told me that night, you need to go home. Check on the house. You haven't showered in 3 days. You got to go. And reluctantly, I left. Go check on the house. I took a shower, and I remember sitting at the edge of the bed, and I grabbed the pillow, and I just screamed into it. Why him? Why him? He's not a bad person. He's trying to do things right. Did my sins fall upon him? I asked that question. I got in our truck. I started going back to the hospital. And I remember traveling down Ashland, and I got to Clovis Avenue, and I made a right turn onto Clovis. I don't know why. Truly can't tell you why now. I drove down Clovis Avenue, and I ended up at OLPH. It's a little chapel. It's a church. Our Lady of Perpetual Help. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. It had just opened, and I remember walking in there, and I seen the bowl of holy water, and I put my hand on the holy water, and I did the sign of the cross like I always did. I walked into that chapel by myself, nobody there. And I thought I did the right thing. I genuinely reflected. I got into the pew. I got on my knees. I began the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And I stopped. I remember looking up, and I remember seeing the cross. It was like had done that so many times, almost just repeating it to repeat it. I stopped praying. I said, okay, I'm done just saying the prayer. I need you right now. I need you to move the life of my son right now. I wasn't just going to go through the prayers no more as a ritual. And I said to him, forgive me of my sins, but if you move my son's life, I will serve you the rest of my life. My life is yours. I will serve you. I was standing up, I recall, and when I turned around, there was 2 older women in there. They were just looking at me, and I looked back at them, and didn't say nothing to them. I confessed to God and asked God to move in the life of my son, that I needed him, that he was on a deathbed, his deathbed. Doctors had turned on him, asking me, the father, to allow my son to die. Again, after being brutally beaten. I went back to the hospital, put all my faith in God at that moment, that he was going to do something for Nick. When I got back, they were lined up on the walls still, people. They had been waiting for me to come back, and my wife had called some of her friends to come to pray that day. And everybody joined hands. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. They had Nick in a bed with tubes in his lungs on both sides, stabbed into his lungs, a tube down his mouth, the machines running, pumping air into his lungs, because both lungs were collapsed, helping his heart beat. His heart was so bruised from getting kicked in the chest. And they said, let's pray. We all grabbed hands. And I remember down the hall, all the way down the hall into the waiting rooms, all the way back around, all the way up to where the nurses were, where Nick was laying. We grabbed hands and began to pray. One of my wife's friends, she started to pray out loud. And she encouraged everybody to begin to pray for Nick. And one of the nurses during that prayer came out of the room. And she's like, you got to come. Something's happening. Come on, you got to come inside. You got to come inside for me and my wife. His heartbeat began to jump up and down. Something was happening. We don't know what's going on. We don't know if it's the machine or what's happening, but something's taking place with your son. You got to get over here. I know now that the Holy Spirit was moving him. And at that moment, Nick started to begin to get life. Because the next day, his heart began to beat on its own. On its own. The following day, they took the machine off his lungs, and he began to use his own lungs. God was moving. I know it. There's no other way to explain it. They couldn't tell us. And the doctor who said he was nothing didn't even show up. That's the truth. That is what people witnessed and seen happen. How can I ever deny the miracle that I seen and the miracle that other people seen that day in that moment when nurses who are supposed to be callous and not have any emotion began to cry and pray? It's God. He was in there. He was caged up in his own mind. He was beginning to get released. And that was just the beginning of it. Even though his heart to beat on his own, began to breathe on his own. That was just the first sign of him coming back. But the battle wasn't over. Because he began to suffer even more. With the medications that were given him, that he was never on before. Trying different things on him, almost like a test. Doctors trying to justify their reasoning that he was alive by giving him more medication. So he had no control over his limbs. His hands, his arms, his legs would go flail like wild. They would just begin to move on without any control.
A month later, he was still in the hospital. And we were at Fresno Cornerstone in the second row. And the phone rang, and it was my brother. He said, Maria, you need to get over here. He goes, Nick, just talk. I go,
Who is that? Who?
He goes, is it Dad? I said, oh my goodness. And we got there. And when we got there, my husband just hugged him and said, Nick, I'm here. I'm here. You're going to come through this, Nick. And we started just praying over him, and my girlfriend Jessica and Rick, they were praying over him. And then after that, it was like a battle still, because they still wanted to release him to go to a rehabilitation center, a convalescent home.
But I was able to talk to him. I was able to calm him. For 26 days straight, I never left. Never. I told him, I'm here. I'm going to be here for you. We're going to come through it. You got to listen to me, Nick. Calm down. Because of that, when we were gone, they used to tie him down. They would tie him up, restrain him like an animal.
And they said eventually he was going to die, because the orders on the report was that he was never going to walk, never going to talk.
Doctors said that Nick would never have any quality of life. Quality was the word they used. And he will never see again. Never. I couldn't accept it. Couldn't accept it.
And that's slowly but surely he started coming out of his comatose, and then going to the 6th floor. He had to do more aggressive rehabilitation because he couldn't walk, and his clinical vision was bad. He couldn't see us. He could hear us, but not really. His cognitive thinking wasn't where we would be thinking, he was more like an 11-year-old.
His hands had curled so bad that they were trying to pull his hands open, I remember. And they put this steel glove on his hands because his hands wanted to go, and he began to twist so bad and crunch up into a fetal position that they had to pull him apart, and it was painful. But he never quit in all that pain. And so I began to do it. Leave him alone. I'll do it. I'll get him to release. I'd whisper in his ear, talk to him in his ear. You're okay. You're going to be fine, Nick.
And so we had a whole year. We had to figure out, where are we going to send him, because we're not doctors. And his cognitive thinking was a little slower. And I finally reached out to the Center for Neuron Skills to get him in there. And again, the medical insurance, they just said he was not medical necessary. And
my wife was fighting the insurance the whole time about different things.
I wouldn't stop. I kept on sending them reports and reports of my son. And finally they said, okay, Maria, he could go, but only 2 weeks. But my son was there for a year and a half. A year and a half, because they saw a lot of potential in Nick.
But you put the lion in his own environment, and he becomes the king of beasts. And that's what I told him. You're the lion, Nick. We're going to control your environment. You get better. You prove it. You and nobody else. And I will help you. Your mom will help you. Your friends will help you. We're here for you. Because of my experience in soccer, it's what I knew. For some reason, I always thought that if I could just get him to think about that, just doing little things, drills, and helping him. Don't stand him up, he can't stand. Because he had lost so much weight, he had lost the capacity to stand on his own, to hold anything, to do anything. But I would stand him up to let him have that feeling. I'm holding you up, but you're standing. I used to get him and press him on my chest. I would tell him, you're standing, feel it. This is where you're gonna be again, Nick. You're gonna stand again. You're gonna stand. You're gonna run, you're gonna walk. It's gonna take time, but you're gonna do it.
It wasn't the same. I didn't even know where my house was at.
It's almost like you're walking in fog.
Reactive, cognitively capable person, so that's a good place to start from.
The recovery process didn't happen overnight, but thanks to the staff at CNS and the support of his family, Nick was finally able to return to doing what he loved. Despite doctors saying he would never be able to walk or talk again.
Good afternoon now. My name is Nick Boreal. I'm 36 years old.
Nick and helping people in there, you know, they used to think he was a doctor because he wore this white robe.
Keep it up, Jim. Nick talks, thinks on his own, walks, has friendships.
He goes, Mama, I'm gonna start running.
With lungs that were beaten down to nothing.
When I run, Mama, I felt free and alive.
With a heart that was bruised so bad. And with the eyesight that they said he never could have again.
It's me versus me, and no one could tell me anything, Mama.
It says that I'm gonna run for those who can't run.
I could just run and run and run.
To show them that if you believe and work hard, you can do it. To show them that, man, if I can run, so can you.
And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
And he runs now. He's running marathons.
And they're off. It's the finish line.